Pokemon Snap, the fun-loving, chill side quest of a game that's filled with cutesy monsters, friends, and adventure, presented to us as harmless research done for our own enjoyment and the good of Pokemon kind. There is barely a story or seemingly any broader motivations. Snap photos, have them rated, sit back, and enjoy the scenery. That is, until you start to dig a little deeper and look at who is in charge and what their true goals may be. How was that for an ominous lead-in? How's it going, everyone? My name's Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. 22 years later and we have the long-awaited sequel to Pokemon Snap. A game with a sequel title so stupid and underwhelming, it rivals the Wii U in a list of Nintendo's worst ever naming decisions. I tend to do theory videos that are entirely based on inarguable factual evidence within a game or series, trying to create genuine connections rather than rampant speculation. This video is not that. I've simply been a fan of Pokemon Snap for many years and wanted to challenge myself to create this hidden story or fan fiction and attempt to explore the corners of that alternate telling with you. So please poke holes, add to this, subtract, expand, or anything else. I think it's important that I distinguish this video as being for fun rather than my usual style. So with that in mind, let's start developing this theory. A unique series spin-off and riff on an on-the-rails shooter where you instead shoot pictures of Pokemon in a variety of colorful settings. But what's really going on here? Surely there's more to this picture? Everything is presented through the lens of being for scientific, educational, and ecological purposes. Okay, I'm gonna cool it on the photography puns, I promise. We're just out here trying to document these species as thoroughly as possible, capturing their most Pokedex-worthy shots, cataloging as many different behaviors as we can observe. The Pokedex was developed by Professor Oak, and is a data accumulation and storage device for all things Pokemon. Oak then leveraged this expertise and influence to become a leading expert in the field of Pokemon, giving lectures at Pokemon academies and hosting a radio show in Goldenrod City. His pocket-sized encyclopedia seemingly outpaced cell phone technology in the world of Pokemon, already existing back in 1996, a full decade before the first iPhone. Maybe this little handheld device isn't quite as advanced, but this could have put Oak in a position to literally be the Steve Jobs of the Pokemon world. Professor Oak has developed what would probably be seen as one of the most useful pieces of technology that world has ever seen, yet he hands out these Pokedexes completely for free to children. Surely there's money to be made there, or at the very least a low break-even point. But the thing is, the Pokedex isn't actually that useful. It allows you to log which Pokemon you've seen and found, but the actual information on hand about each is often inaccurate or hilariously exaggerated. It lists Tentacruel as having 80 tentacles, Pidgeot flying at Mach 2, Alakazam having an IQ of 5,000, or Magcargo being hotter than the sun. For someone who is seemingly so focused on research and education, it really seems like Oak has never given a damn about what ends up on this thing. He has an army of 10-year-olds contributing to an unmoderated Bulbapedia, filling in whatever fantastical interpretations they come up with. In the anime, it is presented that the Pokedex has the entirety of the English language stored within its system, and that it can magically learn everything about Pokemon just by pointing it and giving it a quick scan. That is some hocus-pocus tech that is well beyond anything we actually have even today. Our machine learning algorithms can only now barely reliably identify species from a picture of a bird or a plant, let alone inherently reporting every useful piece of information that you could ever hope to know. And if that actually worked, there would almost be no need for biological fields in a short matter of time. We would quickly document every species, and once documentation is out of the way, the focus would instead be on larger environmental and ecological concepts, not simply listing species. So really, if the Pokedex worked the way it was supposed to, the very nature of research would be changed, and wouldn't play out at all in a way that we're familiar with. There's a storyline in the anime where Oak traveled forward in time, so it's possible he either stole this tech from the future, or maybe stole a completed encyclopedia and programmed it in, claiming that it's all being generated when it's really simply referencing this existing library of knowledge. But if that were the case, and he already had access to all the knowledge of every Pokemon, much of the series wouldn't make sense. Instead, I imagine that there are different Pokedexes existing on a trial basis, handing out some that need to be filled in manually, and others that instead report what others have filled in, then providing the option to alter or contribute to what others have added. So much closer to a Wikipedia, but where not everyone knows that anyone could edit it. The same way YouTube will show different ads to different people, or Netflix will demo a new layout for a select few users. The Pokedex has never had the ability to invent or assess this information, it only appears that way from the majority of users' perspectives. There has to be something being collected here, some unknown, something of value, but if everything that existed in the Pokedex was being filled in by the 10-year-olds using them, then it seems like adults would either not bother anymore, or that it would become common knowledge that everything in it is made up. So, one of the smartest men in the world hands out this technology for free to children, and then fills it with the unfiltered ramblings of those very same children? Remind me again why this guy is so wealthy and influential, or what his end goal is with this supposed philanthropy? Professor Oak is such a fiend for knowledge that he started pushing trainers to begin younger and younger. He is on top of the research world and is unwilling to give that up. Sure, he could be seen as charitable, giving away these Pokedexes and encouraging the youth to care about research and the environment, but let's get real. Nobody reaches the top and stays on top without stepping on a few heads or looking out for themselves first. Oak's value isn't in the Pokedexes themselves, or engaging a new generation of Pokemon trainers. It is in the data that is collected. All data. That of the Pokemon, their types, powers, behaviors, preferences, interactions, locations, and anything else that can be thought of, as well as the behaviors, skills, locations, and interactions of everyone using the Pokedexes. As we've seen in recent years through things like Amazon and Facebook, all of our smartphones and home devices, data collection and exploitation is one of the most profitable industries there is. It makes sense that a man who is a decade ahead of the curve on handheld tech would also be one of the earliest pioneers of creating a farmable network of personal data. You never simply boot up a Pokedex and immediately start collecting. They are personalized, requiring you to enter your own data, allowing you to be uniquely and thoroughly tracked, cataloged, and identified. Today we refer to that as your digital fingerprint. He doesn't care that the Pokedex is filled with inane ramblings and useless misinformation. He might even have it set up that Pokedexes rarely agree, and if two people were to ever compare it and question that information, one of them would be stuck thinking that they have an outdated version or that the research is still being conducted. He has real researchers under him filling out their own reserves, and hoarding the actual data and statistics. That care and effective research could have been his foundations for where this rise to the top of the field began. It's also been indicated that Oak was a very successful trainer in his own right, possibly even a champion. Maybe some of those winnings could have been his initial seed money, and a large reason of why he's admired and revered in both academic circles and not. That would certainly guarantee a wider influence than your typical scientist. But on his way up, he would have been approached by some interested and unsavory third parties. Those who themselves have been trying to accumulate as much knowledge as they can on all things Pokemon. That's right. Professor Oak's secret investor that keeps this whole operation afloat is none other than Team Rocket. I think the laziest theory that I could maybe give for a Pokemon video is that the secret benefactor of all this is Team Rocket. I'm sure you've heard that before in other theories in other contexts, but I think with the real world relevance of data farming, it makes this one feel that much more likely, and I think as we pull at it a little further, maybe you'll start to get on board and feel that this theory has a little bit more to offer. I can hope. Team Rocket subsidizes his costs to produce and distribute the Pokedex, an uncontrolled system that only exists to tell Team Rocket when and where trainers and Pokemon are, and provide them with an abundance of raw data they intend to exploit to capture more and more Pokemon. They pay Oak handsomely for this information, which allows him to take his true research to new heights. He intends to continue his dominance in this field, but keeps those findings for himself and some for Team Rocket, hiding behind the fact that all his research is publicly available through the Pokedex. I'm sure there's some lengthy terms of service or user agreement that you don't actually own that data, or that some of it will be held back. You know, the sort of thing none of us are ever actually going to read, especially not a 10-year-old. Oak is a respectable figure. I still think he would have gotten gotten into this business without any ulterior motives, and part of the reason he might justify his actions is the ways he still sees himself doing good. For him, the ends justify the means. This would be like if Bill Nye gave all of us a digital encyclopedia and said, "I think kids of all ages will really enjoy this, but due to federal restrictions, a 10-year-old can't actually consent to giving their data, so please when you pick up your Pokedex, ask your parents to sign off for you, and they can even help you contribute to it with one of their own." Obviously, some people would see this as objectionable, but you better believe that if millions of kids asked for a Pokedex for Christmas, but in order to actually use it, their parents had to check a box on the opening screen, they would do it because Bill Nye said it was cool. Or, most kids would lie and check it off themselves. In the world of Pokemon, it's actually in Team Rocket's best interest that all that information remains inaccurate, so they have the advantage in their tracking and capturing of Pokemon. They want trainers and their rivals flustered. This is their own valuable resource. By starting kids so young, they have both long-term data and personality profiles that can be used to feed into their algorithm of these individual children, as well as pulling kids away from school. They are lured with these grand pursuits of being a Pokemon master, all while hampering their education and leaving them without the intellectual basis of critical thinking to question these bunk Pokedex entries. That mantra of "gotta catch 'em all" sounds like something that would come straight from Team Rocket. It's propaganda. They want the player in a perpetual, borderline, unattainable, all-consuming struggle to document every possible bit of information out there. What do you get for achieving this? A sense of self-satisfaction, I guess. It pits everyone against one another. There's no teamwork in this. Any Pokemon they catch is one less for you. You always want to have more than your neighbor. Oak himself seemingly eggs on this rivalry system. You should always be in competition, always battling. And the more that they can make Pokemon mastery an individual pursuit, the less likely anyone is to see the larger picture and realize they are being manipulated. Pokemon Snap is a story of young enthusiasts being brought into the research fold. Not every child is going to enjoy the pursuit of chasing, capturing, and training these Pokemon, but why leave any young stone unturned? Ash is the quintessential example of an overzealous kid who's maybe not the brightest Chinchu in the pond. The best use for someone like that is to send them off on a pursuit of glory, contributing heaps of data along the way. Blindly battling, never questioning. You're even awarded small tokens along the way to keep you motivated and committed. Children who are shown to be more observant, more patient, and more compliant, are less of a wild card, are perfect to be molded into that inner circle. Perhaps they're lured in the same way kids used to be placed in gifted programs in school, when really it just meant the teachers didn't want to babysit you and they just gave you extra work. Characters like Todd Snap are scooped up and placed in a controlled environment where they can contribute to more of the real research. The sort of behavioral science studies and thorough documentation that would allow Team Rocket to predict how they should approach and handle each species once they have been observed and reported in the field by trainers. They now have all the location data and the important information that is lacking in the common Pokedex. As these other kids are slowly taught how to interact with and photograph the Pokemon, it devolves from simple picture taking to light antagonizing with thrown apples, directly disrupting the concept of observing Pokemon in their natural state, to something known specifically as a pester ball. This exists for the sole purpose of tormenting Pokemon, forcing them to react and pushing them to the brink. As someone who has worked in research, I can tell you that you need permits just to take a sample of a plant and years of training to physically touch or handle wildlife. Never in a million years would anyone allow for anything near a pester ball. That sounds like a villain tool. It was shown in the anime that Todd has a level of desensitization to Team Rocket's antics. Ash falls into one of their pitfall traps, and Todd's focus instead remains on attempting to photograph Pikachu rather than helping. He becomes more aware of his surroundings and others later in the show as he becomes further removed from that indoctrination and starting to mingle more with his peers, something that seems frowned upon in this individualistic society. I use Team Rocket as a bit of a blanket term for any of the antagonistic factions within the Pokemon universe, but considering we're talking about Oak, Team Rocket feels most likely. In new Pokemon Snap, we are reintroduced to Todd, now a little older, and having a protege of his own. The direct influence of that villainous team is being extrapolated and continued, having having the next generation of contributors to this research being brought in at arm's length with neither mentor nor protege realizing the machine they are now secretly a part of. The further removed this becomes, the less likely it is for anyone to realize the sinister system they're a part of. While we waited over 20 years for this game, it does not appear that Todd is 20 years older, although he has definitely aged up some. Instead, I imagine that this game takes place somewhere in the midpoint of that Pokemon timeline, well after the series began, with Oak well established, but others having started to emerge either under his influence or in direct competition, yet still before some of the furthest off events we've seen in the mainline games. Pokemon Professor is now an occupation filled with corruption and greed. In this new game, Professor Mirror is no different, a young enthusiast who has seen the truth and is now looking to get their own piece of the action, starting off on a remote, lesser-known island where they can work in peace. Reddit user Ravenkin pitched that Mirror is in fact a young version of the X and Y leader of Team Flare, Lysander. The name Mirror maybe shows that he reflects what has come before in Oak, also rejecting the common convention of using tree species as a surname as they attempt to do something new. And as their influence grows and they evolve into an increasingly nefarious character, they instead choose the name Lysander, which literally means liberator. Maybe they see themselves as someone who's going to break the chains of this system, put an end to Pokemon training and research. They might not attempt to bring down the whole system, but they certainly want to remove Oak from their seat of power and rise up to take it for their own. But that comes later. As we see them in new Pokemon Snap, Mirror has a trimmed back, less wild hair and beard style of what eventually is seen with Lysander, as well as a pair of more neutral researcher's goggles that become the flashy ones they are eventually seen wearing. Yes, the hair color goes brown to red, but perhaps here it is actually just a darker red, maybe on the rusty side. It's more apparent when it's grown out, changes as they get older, perhaps as they move increasingly from their lab work it becomes more sun-dyed, or they could literally just dye it orange themselves. There are quite a few possible explanations for that. As we're reaching the end here, a major new Pokemon Snap ending spoiler here. It's like the final scene of that game. So I'll give you a brief moment to frantically pause or click away while you decide if you are okay with the possibility of having the final moments of a game with not much story spoiled for you. So, for everyone who's seeing it through, at the end of new Pokemon Snap, we are tasked with photographing Xerneas. This opens up some big questions, and could possibly be Mirror's gateway to his obsession with this legendary Pokemon, and why he begins his pursuit of utilizing them in his eventual ultimate weapon, a mechanism that is shaped like a giant crystalline flower, much like the crystal blooms we thoroughly document throughout the events of the game, ones that Mirror frequently asks us to specifically study, utilize, and document. That ultimate weapon is something that was actually created by AZ 300 years ago. It was made in the shape of his Floette's unique flower, and was initially created to bring his Floette back to life, later being modified and turned into a weapon. Thank you to Grounded Aura for that little piece of lore. So in that case, Mirror, or Lysander, could have been studying the Crystalblooms in an attempt to enhance their understanding, and perhaps reverse engineer this weapon to be something more ecologically based, tying in what AZ had done all that time ago, and integrating it with their own biological background. At the end of new Pokemon Snap, with the player's success, the other members of the lab recognize that Pokemon must specifically recognize and react to those who truly love them. That's part of the importance of a new generation being brought into this, quote, research team. These are kids getting into it for the right reasons, not realizing they're joining the wrong organization. Mirror is baffled by this. It's something he has never experienced. Pokemon are a resource to him, and a means to an end. He has never cared for them, and it's a mutual distrust that will only grow from here, until he takes things too far. After completing the game, he even devises a new course scoring system to keep the player repeating the same sections of the game, trying to outdo themselves, leaving photographers trapped in a never-ending research loop, the same way trainers are stuck always capturing and battling more to outdo one another forever. So these two cutesy little spin-off titles, if all this is to be believed, possibly provide some of the most crucial information to the secrets of Pokemon series lore. A group of mad scientists funded by villainous teams, mining data, exploiting children and Pokemon for their own pursuits of power. And in every way that we try to directly interfere with those plans and battle against their grunts and figureheads, we are unwittingly contributing to those sinister machinations every step of the way. Everything we do, we add, we challenge, we pursue, that's another piece of data. Another link in the chain, another cog in the machine. So if you ever find yourself stuck in the world of Pokemon, I would say maybe try your hand at farming. It seems like you're much less likely to get caught up in anything sinister. Although, there aren't really other animals around to eat, are there? Maybe you can just farm some crops? Is nothing safe, cute, and nice in this series anymore? This video is brought to you by my own Let's Play channel, Graham Games. I just genuinely don't have anything else to plug right now. This channel has actually outgrown that one, so I'm guessing many of you don't know that exists. So if you want more Graham in your week, I try to show off brand new indie titles every day, and if you really want more of a direct connection to this video, me and my buddy Dave played the original Pokemon Snap a few years ago. Maybe that's where you choose to start. I'll have one of those cards in the corner, links in the end cards and the description, all that good stuff. So yeah, this video is brought to you by me. I'm very excited to hear from you guys. See if you have any interpretations of your own, or any ways you could add or build to this existing theory. I think it'll just be fun to discuss. Let me know what you think of new Pokemon Snap. Did you like it? I thought it was kind of great. I really disliked the Illumina levels though. I thought they were very boring. There's my review. Don't forget to go check out that Let's Play channel. I just really enjoy showing small indie games off over there. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and thank you to patrons of the channel whose names you can see scrolling off to the right. I'll see you again soon.